Hello, Freedom Pioneers. Billy Mays here. Are you tired of big tech tracking your every click? Are you sick of algorithms deciding what you see? Are you bored of Netflix subscriptions that cost a kidney and Spotify ads that last longer than the song? I know you are, because I'm fucking bored just thinking about it. But I have the solution: infrastructure. So powerful, so private, so decentralized, it will crack the concrete of censorship. It's the brand new PAZNIA library. That's right. It's a free to-use privacy, friendly, decentralized combination of Netflix, Spotify, and your digital book app, and it's live right now. Check it out. We've got the full HBO documentary, The Anarchists, with Jason Henza and Miranda Webb. We've got the legendary Bill Cooper documentaries. We've got Alongside Night, libertarian fiction, and Eyes Wide Shut, which, let me tell you, is basically nonfiction. And wait, there's more. We've got Trailer Park Boys. We've got Sky Huddleston's Second Realm Speed Dating, and music streaming is coming soon. Plus, a digital book library is on the way. Terabytes of content, more to upload. We have the beginnings of true media freedom, an infrastructure base with many, many potentialities. I'm Billy Mays, and I'm always here to help you take back your media. Visit lbry.paznia.com. Again, lbry.paznia.com to start streaming today. Billy Mays, signing off to go binge watch Firefly. Over and out.
You're listening to the PAZNIA Radio Network.
This is Tinker Tribe Live with host Greg Doud.
What's up, all you PAZNIA Radio listeners? This is Greg Doud here, coming to you today for the Self-Liberation Saturday line of shows. Just got back from the activation tour last night in Franklin, Tennessee with Derek Bros, and got to meet some cool people over there. So that was a really great event. But today, what are we going to be talking about? We're going to be talking about biochar and how you can make it. What is biochar? What does that mean for your overall soil health? And just kind of give you an introduction. I want to give you guys some concepts about what we're doing in the process. And audio. I wasn't able to get the feed incoming audio, but we're good. So I'm going to share with you guys some of that information today and lead that into hopefully you'll come away after the show today with one way of being able to set up your own biochar production system and use it in helping to build your soil fertility. So I just want to give you a story about how I learned about biochar and what got me interested in looking into it more. So I was in a research lab another life ago, working to carbonize cellulose fibers, actually, that were going to be used in a certain type of heat shield application. So when I was working on that research project, during that time, I was also starting to get into gardening and permaculture and learning about how to grow food and do that more regeneratively, looking into all of our industrial agriculture system and just seeking alternatives so that you could do, a more holistic type of agriculture. And that led me to all these folks in the permaculture community with all their information, like Bill Mollison, the guy that kind of brought it to the modern day, and Jeff Lawton and his greening of the desert, and looking at some of those guys' information, and then this documentary about Terra Preta, which is a unique soil that they find in the South American rainforests. And the description of those soils is like they're able to continuously like mine these soils, and they found all these traces of animal bones and clay pots and this crystallized carbon material, which is the main focus of what we're talking about today, which is biochar. So I have a piece here in my hand. I don't know how well that'll show up on the webcam there, but this is a piece of a plum tree that I carbonized. And when I say that, what exactly am I talking about? Like, how do you take a piece of wood or pretty much most organic materials? I've seen people, carbonize all kinds of stuff. I think there's a guy on YouTube. His name is Carbonize This, and he'll put in all kinds of biological stuff and turn it into carbon, or this crystallized carbon, what we call biochar. So you can do that with all kinds of things, bones, all your plant matter. You can throw leaves, you can throw nuts, you can throw any kind of woody material, wood chips, all that kind of stuff. You can put it into some type of what you would call a retort, and heat it under a high temperature heat up to around 270 degrees Celsius, I believe. So you got to get this thing really hot, and you need to do that in the absence of oxygen. And what that's doing is it's driving out all of the volatiles inside of that organic matter, like water, like methane, and all of this stuff gets driven out into a gas out of your somewhat sealed retort chamber. So you don't need like a complete absence of oxygen, but you need to starve that inner chamber of most of the oxygen as possible. And there's a really cheap and simple way of doing that, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today. And it involves basically you get a metal trash can, one of those galvanized metal trash cans, and then a 55-gallon steel drum. These things both need to be some kind of steel, because this is going to get pretty hot. And you're going to, in the outer drum, in that 55-gallon steel drum, you're going to create a series of holes in the bottom of the drum, and then in the top part of that steel drum, probably about 3 inches lower than the top, because what we're aiming for is to get this hot enough and even that heat as evenly distributed around that inner chamber as you can. So the that when you create your fire, you're essentially creating a fire both on the top of that chamber and below the chamber. So it's a really easy thing to set up, and it takes a minimal amount of tools. On the top of the steel drum, you'll have the lid. You want to save the lid, and if you can find one of these steel drums that has they typically come with a clamp seal that goes on the outside of the top of that steel drum. You'll remove that, and you'll cut a hole in the top of that lid, and then you'll take some wood stove pipe, and you will cut, using some metal shears, some tabs along the bottom of that wood stove pipe. And the place that I picked that up at was Rural King locally, and they may carry that at Tractor Supply as well. Or you could most likely find it at one of the big box stores. Trying to do my best to stay away from some of those big box stores right now in my life. But, if you have a local, maybe like an Ace Hardware or Tractor Supply or a Rural King, and they're all big box stores, but I guess they're a little bit better than Home Depot or Lowe's, in my opinion. But anyway, find yourself on Facebook Marketplace, wherever you can find it. If you can find a wood stove pipe, you can even fab one up out of sheet metal, out of steel, and then just create a cylinder out of that, and then rivet that into the hole that you're creating in that lid for the 55-gallon steel barrel there. And I did send Rayo a video that I put on my old it's an older video from Twitter that kind of shows some of the tools required there. But your basic tool requirements are going to be a metal shear. You need a rivet gun. You're going to need some steel rivets. I think I used a 3/16 rivet, steel rivet, and you're going to need the corresponding drill bit for that rivet, your drill gun. You're going to need a step bit that will go to I think they go up to about 1 3/4 inches, something like a step bit that can go up to about 1 3/4 inches. And then a smaller step bit that you can that can go up to around a 3/4 inch hole size. So those are all the tools that would be required for this guy. You might need a set of channel lock pliers as well to help you bend those corners of the stovepipe. so that you can create that riveted section. And what I found doing this is that stovepipe is pretty critical, because it gets that heat, a way to channel up from the bottom of that metal drum, of that 55-gallon steel drum, and it helps to heat that upper wood, that upper fire that you need for having that even heat distribution and building up the heat in the inner retort. If you don't get this thing hot enough, you're not going to get it to fully carbonize your material. So that's what you're looking for. And once you gather up all your tools, then what you're going to do is, along the bottom of that 55-gallon drum, steel drum, you're going to use your step drill bit to put in those 1-inch diameter holes. So you want the larger holes at the base, so you can pull in a lot of oxygen from the basically kind of like a thermosiphoning effect, where the oxygen from the outside is getting pulled in through that natural heat rise of that lower fire up and around your chamber, your retort chamber, and then up and through the stovepipe at the top of the barrel. And you're going to do that about every 6 inches in a staggered pattern, going around the base of your 55-gallon steel drum. And you want to keep that as close to the bottom as you can. You know, you don't, you can go maybe about a 1/2 inch above that lower lip of the steel drum, and make that your bottom hole, and then come up about an inch or two in a staggered about 6 inches away. And you'll make your next hole, which will be that 2-inch higher than the lower hole. You'll come another 6 inches, and you'll put in another 1-inch hole down a 1/4 inch from the bottom. And then you'll just do that, alternating all through, all the way around your steel drum along the bottom. And then you're going to start making your holes towards the top of that steel drum in a staggered pattern along the top there. And I did 3/4 inch holes in a staggered pattern, and I made them about 2 inches or so apart from each other, all the way around the top of that steel drum, and just staggered them probably a couple inches away from each other. So once you get this all completed there, and you have your stovepipe on the top of your barrel, you're going to want to make some biochar. So the best way to do it, to prepare your materials, is to take some kind of reciprocal saw and use any kind of tree trimmings, or anything from any woody mass that you want to put into your inner retort. And you want to chunk those up into some smaller size pieces. So the larger something is that goes into that retort chamber, the hotter you're going to have to get that thing to fully carbonize all the way to the interior of the material. So preferably you want to have, some smaller chunks of that wood material that you can throw into that chamber. And fill it up as much as possible, because once this reaction starts taking place, once you start getting that heat into that inner chamber, you're going to end up with about a third of the volume that you start with. So you want to pack that inner chamber to maximize your yield of carbon at the end. And so the finer that you can cut everything down and pack into this chamber, the better, because you want to fill that thing up as much as you can. And so you'll pack your trash can up, that metal trash can that we're talking about, with as much of that material as you can. And we've got Areo showing the video right there of how much of that material that I put into that trash can. Like I said, the smaller the better, the more dense you can pack it in there, the better. Because as all that water, all those volatiles that are coming out of that wood is going to shrink down the size of everything that you put in there. So you can really pack that thing up as full as you can, all the way to the brim of that trash can. Pack it as much as you can in there. So you've got your trash can full of that material, and now you're going to want to start up your fire. So what I like to do in order to get a full burn out of the surrounding fire is you can take a couple rocks and put that in the bottom part of the steel drum, and then start adding your fire material, your scrap wood, whatever you have on hand. If you've got some old boards that you need to burn up, or you've got cardboard that you need to take care of, old newspaper or junk mail or whatever, line all that stuff in the bottom for your initial fire. And you want some more dense wood in there in the bottom. And what I like to do is go ahead and get that initial fire started. After doing this a few times, go ahead and get that initial fire going in the base of the steel drum. And on most of these metal trash cans, they have handles that you can use to pick that thing up. Make sure that you have the lid on that trash can, and you're going to pick up that trash can, and you're going to put that into the steel drum, into that 55-gallon steel drum, as that lower fire is burning. And once that's started to burn down a little bit, after you get that drum in there, you're going to take more of your wood material, anything that you're wanting to burn up, and you want to kind of create an even space around the outside, or between your 55-gallon steel drum and that inner trash can. And you're going to want to put wood into the sides of that, in between those two. You're going to want to stick wood in there all around it. And then you're going to want to stack some wood up on top of the trash can as well, and give it an air gap between that trash can, the wood that you put on, and the upper stovepipe. Once that fire starts going, and the smoke, that's going to create an incredible amount of smoke. So be careful about your neighborhood and where you're doing this at, because your neighbors might complain, especially if there's some kind of fire ban or something in the area. Hopefully you're out on some property or something like that where you can go and do this and it's not going to be a problem. But once you get this fire going, and especially if you have a lot of wet material that you're starting with, which was the case for me recently because it's been raining. We've had some unseasonal rainfall here in Alabama. We've been in kind of drought conditions the past few years, but this year, this summer has been more like spring than summer. So we've had a lot of rain. And when I got this thing fired up, it smoked smoked insanely. And what's neat about it is when you're watching this thing and you're watching the airflow start to happen and the draw up that stovepipe, you'll see the smoke just get pulled up into that stovepipe. And actually, because of the way that you have the holes on the outside of the barrel, in the way that the air is mixing in, I actually was seeing, vortexing happening on the inner part of that stovepipe with all the smoke coming out of it. And so as that heat is drawn up and it's starting to combust all the wood on the outer side of the trash can, it's going to start to cause a fire on this wood that you stacked up on top of the trash can, and giving it enough airspace so that there's enough airflow to draw up in and into that stovepipe. Then that upper fire is going to get started, and you'll be watching this thing, and all of a sudden you'll just start to see flames shooting up that upper stovepipe. At that point, you're getting really, really hot, and you will notice toward the bottom of your steel drum that it's getting so hot that steel is starting to glow red. And then you know that you've got a really good heat going on around that inner chamber. And what I like to do is monitor that fire and make sure that all that wood is going to burn down into coals over the top of the trash can, and watch this thing and make sure that you want to prepare an area so that either you're putting this thing down on some kind of pad, or you're dousing the area around it with water, because this thing's going to get extremely hot. If you have any dry grass or anything around that thing, it's going to catch it on fire. So yeah, I wanted to monitor that while this heat was building up, and I got my lower and my upper fire going, and made sure to go around and douse that area around the drum really well with water. So like I said, we've had a lot of rain recently, so wasn't too concerned about getting fire spreading everywhere, but made sure to douse that entire area with water just in case, because I'm going to leave this thing overnight. So that was once this starts burning, I kind of let it burn and monitored it for maybe an hour. I let all that kind of burn up and get really hot, and then made sure that entire area was nice and wet. And then it got to a point where all those coals were burning at the top of that inner metal trash can, and the lid that I built just sits right down on top of the steel drum. So now I have a small air gap here in between the lid and the inner pyrolysis chamber retort, because that action of heating is called pyrolysis when we're driving off all those volatiles. At that point, when that lid everything has burned down and that lid has met up with the steel drum, I feel comfortable enough to walk away from it for the night and let this thing just burn out all the combustibles that have been in there. And at that point, I don't add any additional fuel and let that thing just burn out the rest of the material overnight, and I can walk away from it and go to bed. And so all in all, you can do this with the preparation of the materials, which I had to go out there. I did a little bit of prep work ahead of time. But that day I went out and cut some more materials just with some loppers, with a lopper tool on some trees that that we cut up. Made all my chunks that were going to go into the inner chamber, and then the fire, that all the combustible stuff that I was going to use for the outside. And I think I spent from after I got off work until probably about 8 or 9 o'clock. So I spent about 3 hours, probably from 6 to 9, setting all this up, monitoring the fire, getting it to a point where I felt comfortable that I could go in and leave it unmonitored. So it does take it's not too bad of a time investment, but you let it go overnight, and then go back out in the morning, and then go check on your inner trash can, and just see the results of what you did. And when you check on this carbon material, one of the things for the quality at the end is when you touch these things together, if you got a really good full carbonization, it should almost sound like glass when it kind of tinks together. If you smack them together, I don't know if that'll pick up on my microphone, but if you did a really good job at heating the inner chamber, it should have almost like a glass-like sound to it when you're completed with that combustion, and when you're completed with that pyrolysis. So this is only part of the story. After you've made your biochar, so after you've made your biochar, that's just the beginning of the process. Because if you took this material, this crystallized carbon material, and you were to put it on your garden beds, then what this stuff will want to do is pull in everything from its surroundings, because if you were to look at this under a microscope, there's all these tiny pores and channels that this material has inside of it, which makes it a great habitat for beneficial aerobic bacteria. That aerobic bacteria is the good stuff, the beneficial bacteria that your plants crave. So it's like Brondo for your plants. It's what it craves. So that's what we're really doing when we're doing this process. We're creating a habitat for beneficial microorganisms so that they can thrive and they can proliferate, as well as a reservoir for water, and then other nutrients. So there's 2 processes that you're going to do after you've created your biochar. It's called charging and inoculating. So charging involves adding some kind of nutrient source. Like I have this liquid kelp here is one good thing that you could add to the biochar. And then to get your beneficial microorganisms in there, you would want to make something like a compost tea, and where you aerate some compost with water, some composted products, organic products that you put through a compost system, and make yourself a compost tea. You're going to want to break down this biochar material into smaller pieces, and you're going to break that down. You're going to add your compost tea and some kind of charging material, something like a liquid kelp. And then you'll let that soak and be inoculated and charged. And that biochar is going to pull in all that material, and create that habitat for all those little organisms. And then you'll be able to take that and put that into your soils. And you can use that as like a top dressing for your raised beds or your garden plot. You know, when you have a new season of planting, you'll come out and you can spread this over, you know, that top layer, add it into some compost that you've done from the previous season, mix that all together and use it as your top dressing. Because what we're aiming for is not an overnight fertility boost, but we're wanting to build that soil season after season, so that we're creating, you know, kind of a more drought resistant, because of its ability to hold so much water, that habitat for the beneficial microorganisms to thrive. And you know, once you start getting into how plants operate, and one person I would really suggest you looking into is Dr. Elaine Ingham on that. If you look up her videos, there's a good YouTube video from Diego Footer with Dr. Elaine Ingham, masterclass on soil biology. If you look that up, but she talks all about what the plants are looking for, the conditions in the soil, what those microorganisms are doing to interact with the roots of the soil to provide the basically the glue that helps them hold on to their food at the roots of the soil. And they're solulizing all the materials. Those bacteria are solulizing the materials that are needed for those plant roots to get the trace minerals they need from the soil. So there's a communication happening because the plant roots will send down what is called exudates, which are a series of simple sugars, proteins, and carbohydrates for those bacteria. And they'll tailor different exudates that would feed and wake up beneficial aerobic bacteria in a synergistic effect of communication to bring them the materials they need out of the soils, which is a really amazing thing about how nature operates. Is that you know, a funny thing that she talked about in her video was like, how do you know how much trace mineral this plant needs? Like, you don't have enough scientific equipment or money to be able to figure that out. But that plant knows, hey, I could use a little bit of this, and then it's going to send down those exudates that are appropriate for those bacteria to go and process that for the root of the plant. So when we talk about growing food, we talk about planting fruit trees, and all this stuff. The health of that plant is based on that microbiological life in the soil. So are you really a tree farmer, or should you be focused on being a little bacteria farmer? And I think the health of the soil is the most important for the plant and how well it's going to do in your environment. So there's other cool stuff along this realm with increasing the health of your plants. There's some more interesting things that you can do, which I haven't experimented with, but supposedly helps a lot with the health of the plants, and goes into the whole biology of our health and how all that works. But the structured water, vortexing water, has a part to play in that. And Dr. Thomas Cowan talks about some of this stuff. If you go and look into Dr. Thomas Cowan, and you find some of his research, then he talks about some of this vortexing of the water. And Rayo, I just saw that he said something about Brown's gas on the plants, and that would be an interesting experiment to do as well. And so, but I think at the basis, you want good water. If you're dumping city water on your plants, then you might be doing some harm to that biology, that microbiology in the soil. So what we try to do is natural rainfall or captured rainwater on a lot of our plants, and strictly water with that only. And then future plans to play around with some of this vortexing of the water to introduce some structured water to the plants and see what happens with that. There's also interesting things you can do to make your plants more drought resistant, which is a kind of a hugelkultur method where you're taking some of that biomass from tree trimmings and wood that you don't export any of that. Don't export any of that any of that biomass. Keep it on your property, but you can use that wood and bury it in the soil and use it to retain more moisture in the soil and create kind of an underground water reservoir for your plants, and keep that soil nice and loose, and ability for oxygen to penetrate down into the soil and all that good stuff for the aerobic microorganisms to thrive in there, and work in synergy with all the microbiology. So how do you even check on that stuff? Like, okay, so this is the next step to take it even further and to check on the health of the plant itself. You can do your visual checks, like you're seeing yellowing on the leaves and stuff like that, then you can see that your plants are in distress. You'll see, maybe some fungal growth if it's too humid, and you'll see spots on the surface of the plants. There could be some kind of fungal activity happening in the area. But to take it another step, you can do things like get a Brix meter, which will help you check like the sugar content of the plants. And this is one thing that I learned from doing the aquaponics versus the soil gardening. In aquaponics, you don't have this synergistic effect of all these microorganisms working in concert with each other, which only happens is only going to happen with soil gardening. You're not going to get those same kind of organisms working in a grow media in aquaponics. Like, you are basically, when you're doing aquaponics, you're creating all those soluble minerals, hopefully from the waste of the fish, and directly giving that to the plant roots without all this other stuff happening with the bacteria. So, from talking to Alan Booker, he's a longtime permaculturist that would come out to some of our Freedom Cell meetings. He keyed me in on that about the if you look at it under a Brix meter of the like the nutrient content, which kind of gives you an idea of the nutrient content of the plants, that aquaponics will never create enough if compared to it won't create as much of a nutrient dense plant compared to soil gardening if it's under a very good microbiological soil condition. So why not both though? I mean, if you're super techie, nerdy, you want to dive down the aquaponics rabbit hole, I think that the two can play in concert with each other. And I haven't totally given up on aquaponics, because I still want to look at how I can interrelate both. And the interesting thing about aquaponics and having water on your property, and in the form of stored water, open water reservoirs, is that it's going to attract all kinds of other biological life to your area as well. So to increase your local ecosystem, and in a drought condition, that could be a backup for you, is aquaponics. So using collected rainwater and all these kind of things to help it out, and kind of use the fish waste as an additional fertilizer for your systems as well, and reintroducing some of those minerals back into the soils. So it's not a either or, it's a why not both, I think. So I think the two can complement each other, but I think good agriculture, regenerative agriculture, building up soil fertility is what you want to focus on for getting food started and having healthy plants and being a resilient person. Wherever you're at with the ground that you have, focus on soil gardening first, I would say. Once you've got a really good hand on doing everything, and figuring out how to keep this whole soil food web in balance, which is pretty critical, finding the appropriate balance in that, and you've really got a handle on that, then if you have the time and resources you can look into other methods as well, hydroponic and aquaponic gardening. And I guess one lesson learned from my personal experience is spreading yourself too thin sometimes. If you're gonna focus on one thing, you need to really focus on that for a while and master it, and then move on to your next thing. Whereas if you're trying to juggle many things at once, then you're not gonna get that full picture and be able to master something as well as you could through that focus on one thing or the other. Let's see. Um, so, in summary, for the show today, the biochar is just one aspect of increasing your soil fertility, and is something that you can do to add as a supplement to your soils. Um, According to Dr. Ingham, it's a great method for sandy soils in particular, um, uh, for building the microbiological aerobic bacteria in the soil. Um, you want to have well aerated soils. You want to make sure that you have a composting practice so that you're adding new organic materials into your soils. You don't want to export any of that good biological materials on your site wherever you're at. All that wood that people throw to their curb for the local companies to pick up, that's good stuff that you could turn into biochar. And you want to use the most pure materials that you can. So if it's on your land and you're doing the best practices that you can, you want to use those materials. But if the only materials you have available is you need to go around and maybe scrounge some up, then you can use it in this biochar process, and through that process, drive off a lot of those. If they did spray with any kind of chemicals or anything like that, hopefully that gets driven off. I haven't done much research into that, so I don't want to recommend that. If you can avoid it, use what you have on your own property. The sunlight and the water for your plants is super important. So your plants need enough sunlight, and good water sources to have in there. Maybe you want to pick up a microscope and you want to look into Dr. Elaine Ingham's work and find some resources on how to use the microscope to look at the microorganisms in your soil. I know that William Bond, Billy Bond's son, he has the permaculture consultant on YouTube. I believe he does some of that work to help show people. I think as well as Billy Bond, they have some resources for that on how you can train yourself on how to use a microscope with a camera, and then take some soil samples and check on that. So you might want to look at that. You might want to go find yourself a bricks meter and figure out how to use that to look at the nutrient density of your plants. And the key of this whole thing of biochar is we're creating a safe habitat. Basically, with all these pores, you're creating basically a little city for all these microorganisms to hang out in and be protected, so that they can be added into the soil and create this soil food web for all the other organisms in the soil. You're going to have little nematodes and arthropods and worms and all these guys in there doing their thing, and fungi, and they're all working together synergistically. And that's what we're trying to do. Is we're through biochar, we're trying to help those little micro organisms. We're trying to help them out a little bit, and by adding that to the soil. So, but you, like I said, you also have these other factors, and um, it takes, practice and getting started, and just starting with this. Another thing that I wanted to add as well is if you have animals, if you have livestock, um, this stuff makes a really good bedding for them as well, and it can help with the smell in your coops. So if you're laying down a carbon material like like wood chips or sawdust, or whatever you can get your hands on as a bedding material, carbon bedding material, then you can add this in there with their bedding, and it'll, over time inoculate with enough water and time. And um, as the livestock like chickens or pigs or goats or rabbits or any of those guys, like you can add this into their feed, if it's small enough. It'll also, since this stuff is so absorbent, it will uh, soak up a lot of stuff in their system. So it could also help out their digestive systems as well by adding it into their feed. And then it's doing that whole process as it moves through their bodies of doing that charging and inoculation process for you. So that's another great idea, is adding this stuff in with livestock, so you get your livestock to do all that work for you, which is a really cool way to, be a little bit lazier on this. Is, you let your animals do the work for you, and then just added that material into their bedding. And then once they've been over that bedding for a long period of time, and those wood chips and everything, and that biochar gets worked into there, and it's had enough time to have all that rainfall and break down all those materials into, a good composted product with all their waste, their urine, and their all their poop mixed into all that. Then you can take that and use that as your composted materials after they've been over those beds for a while, and then bring those back in and reintroduce that to your gardens and your fruit trees and your perennials. And that's what I'd like to recommend too, is, focusing on planting perennial fruit and nut trees and bushes. Um, and you have your annual gardens and your annual garden plants. But when you focus on perennials, it's a lot less effort that you have to put in every year for seeding and doing all that kind of stuff, and getting stuff in the ground. They're going to come if you're taking care of the soil around those guys, and you're putting in all that upfront work and doing all that. Then mm, you can maximize your time, I would say. So Stefan Sobiak is a really good guy for like permaculture, food systems, food forest information. I've been digging into his stuff recently, and looking at plants that thrive in your local area, finding like perennials that are more adapted to your local area. I would say is something to look into. Um, and as the plants adapt to your local environment, they're going to thrive a lot more for your local area year after year. When that parent plant produces a seed, it's sending out some of that genetic material, kind of giving it the adaptation for your local environment. And eating as local as possible is another really great benefit for being able to grow your own food. The more local that you can get your food, the more nutrient dense it's going to be. The quicker you can eat it coming off of the plant. And it also gets into some information from the information from the local area, and how your cells are operating. Some stuff from Dr. Jack Cruz that I've been learning about is really interesting. So you want to eat as locally as you can. Try to focus on that. Biochar. Hopefully this has been a pretty good intro for you on a method of creating biochar. And there are other methods out there, with some simple tools and a little bit of time up front. You can build one of these things and start producing some biochar on your property and testing it out on your and get started. Get started and build yourself something. And one of my buddies does it in an alternative way. He just takes a regular steel 55-gallon barrel and just builds a fire in there, and there's enough area in there where it starts to starve the oxygen, and he creates it like that. So maybe in the future I'll take mine and compare it to kind of his method. We'll do like a cross comparison on all that kind of stuff and kind of figure out some different ways that you can do it and present that in the future. But that's about it for this today. I appreciate it, and just want to encourage everybody to take the information and do something with it and get started, and start small and work from there. Keep learning, and we'll see you guys next time.